What's up, everybody? Nick Powell's publisher of 1851franchise.com here with another episode of Meet the Zor. We are talking Sola Salons. Coming up next. Actually, Ben, we're going to talk your story first, then we'll get into Sola, because I'm always intrigued by this. How did you accidentally fall into franchising? What's your franchise story?
Well, I think it's like many people fall into franchising. In the Great Recession of 2009, 2010, I found myself looking for my next big thing and committed to or promising myself that I was going to take control of my career and take control of my destiny, really. And so I found franchising. And I tried to become a Sola franchisee at that point. But my wife, who's a physician, got a job back here in Denver. And I called the founders of Sola and explained that I wanted to come back and be a franchisee in the Colorado area. They invited me to join the home office at that point because they wanted to grow the company with real intention. And so that's how it started.
Awesome story. So you probably had an advantage then, because if you're looking at the business as a franchisee, you did due diligence that typically someone stepping into the seat of leader may not go that deep on the due diligence level. Did that give you an upper hand? Because you said you wanted in still after you looked at you under every rock.
Yeah, I mean, I came really close to signing a lease, so I knew a lot about Sola when I joined the home office, and I would say it gave me the advantage of just understanding the pain of the average franchisee. Even though I'd not at that point opened a location, I did work for the home office for 2 years before I opened my first location, and then I opened 2 more. So I was a full-time employee of the franchisor. I also owned 3 locations myself.
How long did you hold on to those 3 locations for?
Until the end of 2020. I remember lying in bed at night saying, if I ever get through COVID, I'm going to sell these franchise units, because my day job was so all-consuming working for the franchisor. The reality is I loved it. Matter of fact, they were great businesses. I still wish I owned them, but I just didn't have the time in my day to manage what was a great and significant investment for my family, as well as manage the franchisor.
Even though you took a job and became a franchisee, you said in 2008, 9, 10, you decided I'm going to take control of my career.
Yes.
Did you still feel like even though you were taking a job, you had taken control of your career?
You mean when I went on the franchisor side?
Yeah.
Or when I was decided to become a franchisee?
Either or both.
Oh. Well, I'll tell you, when I joined Sola as a franchisee, that was very much me taking control. I wanted to work for myself. I wanted to make my own decisions, and that was the impetus for that. But when I came on the franchisor side of the business, it was a very small company. I mean, there was really only 5 of us. In the company, even though it had been around for about 10 years already, 9 years already, it was it was wide open. There wasn't a lot of systems in place. The franchisees at that point were mostly friends and family, and the systems had not really been put in place to scale it. So a lot of those systems we were inventing in that 2012 timeframe.
Out of curiosity, if you put back on your franchise candidate hat, I would assume you looked at other concepts. What was that process like, and what made you land on Sola?
I did look at other concepts, but the advantage of Sola was so just clear to me. The low employment model, you really, until you have 3 or 4 of these locations, you can manage them yourself, which was very appealing to me. And that's really what I was setting out to do. But even with 6 or 7 locations, you may have 1 employee. Also, there's no inventory. There's no food that can spoil. You have to maintain quality of. And it's just a relatively operationally simple model. So I was immediately attracted to it.
The point that you're entering the system both as a corporate corporate staff and as a franchisee. I mean, this was innovative for the time. I mean, at that point, co-working was the best example of a business that was doing shared real estate within one lease or within a building ownership. When you're getting involved in this, are you seeing the blue ocean as big as it was then? And are you saying like, okay, let's go, like this could be huge?
Yeah, it's interesting. We knew that we were solving a problem with salon life. The traditional salon was very broken, and we knew that we were helping, hairdressers and beauty professionals, but really take control of their careers by renting a space from us, renting a studio. We thought we were renting a room. We didn't really realize at that point that we were selling a lifestyle of control and freedom for a hairdresser. So that's what really the connection to this the WeWork or the co-working space that we hadn't quite made yet. In about 2013, 2014, we really had the aha moment that we're not landlords, we're not leasing a room, we are actually presenting a lifestyle. It's more of a membership model where a stylist signs up for a lifestyle like she would maybe a gym. Mm-hmm. And then with that lifestyle, she gets to control her own space. She gets to control what she sells, how much she charges, the hours that she works. If she's a mom, she can get home to take care of the kids. If she's an educator or has another gig going on, she can do that on the weekends. It allows her that flexibility to really live her best life.
It's interesting when you're talking about the people who would take out a suite or a salon room. You're saying the same thing that you were searching for when you're going into your career. It's at different levels, but it's exactly the same. It's like at some point, how do you get out of this rat race that you're stuck in, put control back in place, because life is short, and why not control outcomes and happiness, right?
100%. Yeah, you just hit on what's Sola to me is a brand that has at its heart that incredible cause, if you will. It's a very, very purpose-driven brand in that way, where we are providing a vehicle for people to take control of their lives. And if you talk to our franchise owners, I'm sure you get the sense they're in it for that feeling of joy that people have when they can control their own professional lives is just so rewarding that many of our franchisees want to be part of us simply to feel that joy.
Yeah, it's rare to find investment opportunities that are on the higher end that also have such a core passion or purpose back to it, and it's cool to see that. Going back to the franchisee, and I'm going back and forth on this line. If I'm advising a franchise buyer, I will always say, don't buy anything that you can't own 3 of. You're going to get unit 1 open, you're going to have enough money to scale, and you're going to have enough money for a rainy day. When you were looking at these opportunities, obviously the outcome from a financial standpoint is great, but trying to line back to what you're doing, were you thinking in that same mindset of how am I going to get to 3 units, knowing that volumes and economies of scale would help build your portfolio?
Yes. So almost, I guess it's 70% of our franchise owners own 1 or 2 or more units. And that's growing. And over time, it will be more like everybody owns 3 units. And the reason is because there's just natural economies of scale. If you only need 1 employee to manage 6 locations, if they're relatively close together, then you're just spreading those costs. So it's and you also get economies of scale around other things like marketing and facilities maintenance and just things like that. So it just naturally works better when you have more than 1, and that's why we have relatively few single unit owners.
All right, my next question, I'm gonna try framing this, and it's gonna start off weird, but I promise you I'll land it.
You bet.
I'm thinking about like getting into the system now, and from my viewpoint, it seems like it's actually more beneficial to get in now. Not that it wasn't then, not because of the support, but because the forced areas of real estate that you're going to go into because you have size. And so early stages, if I'm a franchise investor, I'm looking at more urban markets, Denver, Chicago. Like I want to be in a place that's going to have tremendous foot traffic. But the reality is the purpose that you serve and the customer that you serve on both the B2B and the B2C side is in every market in America. And so if I'm buying a franchise now and I'm getting rejected in the market that I thought would have made sense, I'm most likely being pushed into a market that actually makes more sense because the real estate's going to be cheaper, arguably easier to find. Is as odd as it is, even in a deteriorating availability, does it actually present almost better opportunity for the next franchisee?
Well, it does in this way, in that when we started the brand, 20 years ago, and I joined it a dozen years ago, the concept was poorly known and poorly understood by landlords, banks, vendors, and that's not the case anymore. I mean, landlords seek us out. We're the concept leader. Banks seek us out. Vendors seek us out. Franchisees who their personal brand is to want to be with the concept leader. They seek us out. So in that way, I think it's easier. Right now, we have availability in tremendous markets, even urban markets. So we have plenty of availability. We don't have to push people to tertiary markets. Mm-hmm. So it's really not as dire as you would think in terms of like, are there great markets available? I will say yes. Solar works in all sorts of markets, and that's because the nature of the business is that one, people get their hair done in all sorts of markets. But two, because of the way the business model works, we're essentially a spread business. We're leasing a space, we're customizing it and have a specialty build, and then we lease out that space to the hairdresser and to the beauty professional. So if you think about it, we lease it wholesale, we add value to it, and then we release it in a retail type fashion. That spread allows us to really go in any sorts of market.
And what I just heard was perception is because you are a sizable brand, you would be considered in the half of a percentage point of franchise brands that have got to the size. The perception is supply and demand exists, but what you just said is we actually have tremendous supply and tremendous demand from our customer base. Is there still that awareness piece to say, well, look at our availability in this market, that we are not sold out, that we do have availability? And secondly, is that why franchisees continue to swallow up more territory?
It is. I do think that there's a perception that we don't have availability that's incorrect. And I think that just comes from the ubiquity of our brand. People see us all over the place. But I would encourage people to give us a call, because I think you'd be surprised at some of the terrific markets we do have available. But we're still feeling demand, and let me tell you why we're feeling demand around the country. So our concept obviously depends on the hairdresser. We're 80% hair in any given Sola location, but the number of hairdressers that are going independent, in other words, leaving the salons, that's growing every year. It's just the way people want to work now. Frankly, it's a modern way of working. But it's not just hair; it's other modalities like skin and nails and lashes and brows and you name it. They also are going independent, and they're able to do this because social media and other digital technologies allows them to get their name out there and get their brand out there. So we're really feeling the expansion of our addressable market, our addressable renter, if you will, and that is our franchisees feel that demand as well.
The best part of your franchisee story, in my opinion, is not entering and scaling; it's exiting. And I think that's the best stories that exist in franchising, when you've built up an asset that has value when you're exiting, versus being in small business, and there might be some value, but it's not at the same multiple. When you exited, did you feel a gap as a franchisee, or did you feel proud? Like where were you emotionally when you turned over the units?
I shed a tear, frankly. as a franchise owner, I became close to the hairdressers and renters in my location. I knew them all by their first name. So I missed that part of it, and I still miss that part of it. That's one of the joys of being a franchisee, is that you get close to the business like that. So I was proud that I was able to build a business that commanded a nice value, but I was sad at the same time because those customers were like family to me.
Now that I saw your answer, the next question, you're at a cocktail event when you were a franchisee. Do you identify as a franchisee, or do you identify as a franchisor? What do you tell people you are?
Oh, when I had both,
Yeah.
I think I just said I work for Sola.
It's a pathway of least resistance.
Yeah.
Fewer follow-up questions. Get back to having the beer. So, okay, so Canon has watched this up to this point. Obviously, like, they've learned some of your background. I think it's awesome when you can say that you've walked a day in their shoes. Like,
Yeah.
how can you even argue that when you're going through a process? But the biggest takeaway from here is that there is plenty of availability, and we are a tremendous business opportunity that continues to add support and resources, because as we grow, we can add more tools back to the toolkit. Is there anything else you want the buyer to know about Sola before we sign off?
Well, I would just say it's a purpose-driven brand, and it's usually resonates really well with folks that, they see themselves as working on the business, not in the business, if you will. And that's why a lot of our franchise owners are former executives. Maybe they've escaped the rat race. Maybe they're called corporate refugees, if you will. And that's I would say why our franchisees seem to get along so well. We just had our annual conference, and it was like old home day, where everybody gets back together, and lots of hugs and sharing of war stories and sharing of successes. And it's just a very, very nice culture because of the like-minded, purpose-driven brand we have.
As an outsider, and I hope people heard that last statement, and we've heard it with both brands. The culture is so valuable, and it's a culture around people, and it's a culture around business, and it's a culture around purpose, and it's a culture around probably understanding how life works to some extent, and the value of it. I think that's a really cool part of the story, and I appreciate you sharing it with me, because I think to an outsider, it's hard to sometimes see that when you land on a website. It's awesome to hear it when you can hear it straight from the horse's mouth, and I'm grateful that you shared some of your story with us today.
Thank you, Nick. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate it.
For Ben, I'm Nick. This was another episode of Meet the Zor.